Nothing at Disney is free, right? Wrong. And to prove it, I'm gonna have an entire Disney day for free, starting with free parking at Disney Springs, where instead of shopping, I went over to the boat dock. That's right, Disney Springs has free boat transportation to a few of the Disney hotels. Getting on the boat was incredibly quick and easy. I didn't need a hotel key and there was no line, so before I knew it, I was well on my way to the Port Orleans Resort. The journey to it was impressively long and beautiful, going through the woods past Disney's golf course, down this big long river, and past these big goofy circular hotel things. Despite all of that though, I was terrified. I am deathly afraid of the water, so the entire ride, instead of focusing on the beautiful stuff outside of the boat, I was holding on for dear life, praying that the boat wasn't about to flip over and that I wasn't gonna meet the real life equivalent of that alligator I just saw outside of the Rainforest Cafe. Thankfully, obviously, I made it to the Port Orleans Resort safely, and let me tell you, this resort was sick. As the name implies, it's themed to New Orleans and it's done incredibly well. It's just like being in New Orleans. This was a great way to start the day. Though what wasn't a great way to start the day was waiting nearly 20 minutes for a bus to Hollywood Studios. This was infuriating because the bus kept getting delayed. They changed the estimate for when this bus was gonna get here like 6 different times. Nonetheless, I was finally able to get on the bus, which was pretty nice and took me directly to the Hollywood Studios transportation area. Now, obviously, I won't be going into the park because I'm way too broke to afford a Disney ticket. Instead, I'm hopping on the Skyliner. Now, the last time I was at Disney World was back in 2018 when the Skyliner was still under construction, and ever since then I have been incredibly excited to get back and give it a try. And it's safe to say it did not disappoint because it was surprisingly thrilling. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not gonna knock your socks off, it's not the next big roller coaster or anything, but it moves deceivingly quickly. I was genuinely shocked at how much speed this stinking thing picked up.
Whoa, we're steaming, dude. Oh my gosh, we're just screaming out of here.
I was also genuinely shocked at how scary it was to come back into the station because it felt like something had gone wrong and I was about to slam into the station. They don't slow the car down until the actual last second. Obviously, it's completely safe, but god dang, it felt like they were cutting it close. Once I got off that one Skyliner, I walked over to another Skyliner. Of the two, this is definitely my favorite because the view it gives for part of it is absolutely incredible. In the beginning, it's just over this bland concrete grass area, but about halfway through, it goes over this big lagoon, which is actually awesome. Although, yet again, I'm afraid of the water, so this was kinda scary because God knows what's living in that thing. Nonetheless, I got off safely, and it was time to go over to the Art of Animation Resort. I was here because I'd read online that they offer a free art class every single day, which sounded awesome. Unfortunately, either I missed it or they're no longer running it because I didn't see any signs for it anywhere. I did see that they were hosting a movie at 8 p.m., which I probably could have watched if I was going to stick around that long, but I saw no mention anywhere of an art class. Despite the disappointing lack of an art class, the resort was still really cool, and I'm glad I decided to spend a little bit of time there. The cars area was by far the standout area. It's basically just a small boy version of what they have over at California Adventure, and the rest of the hotel was also really cool. The Lion King area was awesome with these big stinking rocks and some cool statues of the Lion King characters, and the Finding Nemo area had some cool statues and a massive pool. The Little Mermaid area did feel a little dated, with most of the theming being these big plastic shiny sculptures. I can't complain because I'm here for free and I'm not staying in any of the rooms, but compared to the rest of this hotel, this whole land just felt a little half-baked. Although, as I said, I have literally no room to complain. So let's just move on over to the Pop Century Resort, which is right across from the Art of Animation Hotel. And honestly, in my opinion, this is the weaker of the two hotels. I know I'm not the target audience for this place because I have absolutely no nostalgia from this time period. Heck, I wasn't even alive for this time period, so I didn't stick around for very long. Though I do have a weird amount of nostalgia from this hotel. Not from the theming, because as I said, I was dead. Nope, not dead. I was not dead. I've never died. I wasn't born yet, but I think I must have stayed here once when I was but a wee lad. Nonetheless, it's time to get back on the Skyliner and go and do something else. Unfortunately, while I was on the Skyliner, I realized that my plan was kinda starting to fall apart.
I just kind of completely forgot all about food, and now my options are either spend like $20 at a meal at a hotel, which is a pretty solid no from me, or go back to Disney Springs, go back to my car, get food from my car. I need that food. I'm gonna go with the second.
I'm not gonna worry about that for at least a little bit longer though, because we still got cool stuff to do. So instead of taking care of my physical health, I hopped onto another Skyliner and went over to EPCOT. Now unfortunately, I did not get a pod to myself on this one like the previous ones, so I don't have much footage of it because I didn't want to record a bunch of random people, which is really unfortunate because this is by far the coolest Skyliner because it turns, which is something I didn't know this type of ride could do. The first turn is by the Riviera Resort and also functions as a station for that resort, and the second is just kind of out by itself in the middle of nowhere. It was really cool. When we arrived at EPCOT, I didn't go into the park and instead walked over to the Boardwalk Resort. Now this place was stinking awesome. I love boardwalk themed areas, and so this was probably my favorite resort. There's not much to do here for free, but if you're willing to spend a little bit of money, they have all kinds of stuff. They obviously have the standard stuff like places to eat, but they also have a lot more unique things like boardwalk style carnival games and bikes that you can rent, which is actually sick. And I think if I wasn't dedicated to having a completely free day and had the money to, I probably would have rented one of these bikes. It just sounds so fun. Maybe one day I'll be able to come back and actually stay in the Boardwalk Resort. I mean, I couldn't imagine it would cost that much, right? Just for one night, the cheapest room?
Good God, $600! That's more than my entire 2-week vacation to Florida cost. Oh my gosh!
So instead of spending the night at the Boardwalk Resort, I decided to walk over to an even more expensive looking resort, this big stinking triangle looking hotel. This place was absolutely enormous. Video is not gonna put into perspective how large this building is, and I wanted to see just how high I could get. I was expecting this place to be fancy, but I was not ready for how fancy it actually was. I was absolutely blown away by the lobby of this hotel. Like, god dang, it's probably the fanciest room I have ever seen in my life. I felt so insanely out of place, so I just booked it over to the west elevators to see how high they would take me, which turned out to be floor 11, which I assumed would give me a great view, but really didn't. So instead, I hopped back in the elevators and went back down to the ground floor, which happened so fast my ears popped. From there, I went over to the central elevators, which took me all the way up to level 20. The view I got from this level was absolutely amazing. I would have spent a good amount of time sitting up here just basking in the view, but I was stinking starved by this point, so I decided to go on back down the elevator and start the journey back to Disney Springs. And while I'm on the bus, let me tell you all about what I did on my second day at Disney for free.
Yeah, I enjoyed the first one so much, I came back for a second day.
The day started out in a very similar way, winding up at the Art of Animation Resort and taking the Skyliner over to the Skyliner hub station. But instead of going all the way over to EPCOT, I noticed this little small sidewalk and I wanted to know where it went, so I decided to follow it. And I am so glad I did because it took me to one of my favorite free things I did at Disney. It took me to the Caribbean Beach Resort, which as the name implies has a beach, but the beach doesn't just have sand and water, it also has free hammocks. This was wonderful. I laid on this hammock for a solid hour and 20 minutes, just listening to music, taking the views, and taking pictures of my feet. It was great. Once I got up, I walked over to the Riviera Resort. This hotel is shockingly large. It doesn't look that big from far away, but when you get up close to it, god dang is this a big building. It's not as big as the Triangle Hotel I talked about a little bit ago, but it's gotta be like 100 to 150 feet tall. I'm pulling those numbers out of my bum. I have genuinely no idea how big this thing is. All I know, it's big, and honestly, kinda lame.
Now, I'm not gonna spend that much time talking about it. Because I'm not staying here, I have absolutely no room to complain about anything.
But I mean, from the outside, it's just a hideous looking building compared to every other hotel we've been to in this video. All of those, even the Pop Century Resort, have more charm and soul to them than the Riviera. It's just a giant, imposing looking, evil gray box. And the inside doesn't get much better. It's also gray and sad,
which I know I'm not the person to talk about because, well, I'm using a gray background, but the only reason I'm using a gray background is because it's boring, it's plain, and it doesn't stand out.
You know how with the Triangle one, I was taken aback by the interior, how it stood out from everything else? This is not that. This feels like a slightly nicer version of a Holiday Express rather than a luxury hotel. When I think of a Disney hotel, I think of something colorful, friendly looking, filled with imagination and joy. This looks like somewhere that imagination goes to die. Other than a few French Disney posters, this does not look or feel like a Disney hotel at all. I've seen comparisons between this hotel and the Grand Floridian, which I honestly think is just laughable. At the end of the second day, I found myself at the Grand Floridian, and the difference between the two is night and day. The Grand Floridian is, well, grand from the minute you see it, and gets even grander once you walk in the door. This is what a Disney luxury hotel should be, not this. Maybe I just walked down the wrong hallways, maybe I just saw it from the wrong angles, and maybe for the people that can afford to stay here, this is exactly what they want. And if you like it, good for you, I'm glad you enjoy it. But for me, this entire area just missed the mark, though it does have a really cool view of EPCOT, which is especially cool as a theme park nerd because you can see the cars running on the back section of Test Track, which is something I've never seen before. Something else that I will say this hotel does very well is the walk over to the Skyliner station. This arch with the mural is beautiful, especially at sunset, and the presentation of the Skyliner itself is perfect. I took the Skyliner over to the EPCOT station, but instead of going back to the Boardwalk Resort, I instead went to the Yacht Club Resort. Like the Caribbean Beach Resort, this one also had a beach, but instead of having hammocks, this one has beach swings, which were incredibly quiet. They screamed absolute bloody murder, but the view made up for it. Not to keep hating on it, but when I was saying that the Riviera was lacking soul, this is what I was meaning. I didn't spend too much time on the beach thanks to how loud the swing was. Instead, I spent a good amount of time walking around the Yacht Club Resort. They have a really cool looking pool here, and if you do a little bit of walking around the hotel, they have arguably the 8th wonder of the world, the backside of hotel. Jokes aside, this hotel was pretty nice. I really liked the carpet pattern they had there. I didn't spend too much time here though because I went to catch a bus to take me to somewhere else. I really wanted this to be a kind of mysterious, ambiguous ending so I could have a big reveal later in the video, but I just kind of spoiled it when talking about the Riviera, so wow, look at that, I ended up at the Grand Floridian, who could have seen that coming? It was a really nice hotel, though the transportation around this area absolutely sucks, and it took me 30 minutes to get to the Polynesian because all the walkways were closed, so my only option was to take the slow monorail. Speaking of transport, what a beautiful transition, I just arrived back at Disney Springs, and it's time to eat a meal of pure health. Now, when I was recording this, I was vacationing to Florida and living out of my car, so I had a ton of food with me. Unfortunately, this doofus decided to park so close to me that I was nearly unable to get into my car, so unfortunately, I didn't have access to my food in the back, meaning dinner was basically just fancy snack time, featuring bugles, bread, soup crackers, double stuffed Oreos, and everyone's favorite Pop-Tarts. After my healthy meal, I went back to Disney Springs, and I was on the hunt to try and find where the heck the bus station is, because for some reason, the bus from the Big Stinky Triangle Hotel wasn't a normal bus, it was a charter bus, whatever that means, and dropped me off where the charter buses go, which is not, as I found out, where the regular buses go. It turns out that the bus station is directly behind the big Coke building I saw earlier, and as soon as I arrived, I noticed that my bus was there, so I absolutely steamed ham to it. At this point, I was on a pretty tight time crunch. There was still 2 really cool things I wanted to do, but to be able to do both of them, everything would need to go perfectly. The first of those was going to the Animal Kingdom Lodge because it's basically a free zoo. Now, the hotel itself was actually epic. This is by far the coolest hotel I have ever been inside of, but unfortunately, I had no time to take it in, so I rushed to the back and went out to the safari area. Unfortunately, by this point, it was incredibly dark, so the animals that were out there were really hard to see. For all I know, that's just a dude out there in a zebra costume. Also, while I was here, there was some really cool cloud-to-cloud lightning happening. I hope this doesn't mean that a storm is coming because that would absolutely suck, but nonetheless, it was so cool. Unfortunately, I didn't have much time to look at that or the animals because my bus was coming, and if I missed it, my ham was steamed. So I ran to the bus and thankfully was able to catch it, though honestly, I was still pretty stressed because I don't know how long this bus ride is gonna take, and I was on an incredibly tight time crunch. Thankfully, it didn't take too long, and before I knew it, I was at the Magic Kingdom. If you know anything about doing things for free at Disney, you know exactly why I'm here. I'm here for the fireworks, but I'm not just gonna watch them from outside the Magic Kingdom gate. That would be really lame. Instead, I'm hopping on the monorail, getting stinking flashbanged by the Contemporary Resort, and going over to the Polynesian Resort. From there, I need to absolutely rush to the beach because, according to the internet, that is the best place to watch the fireworks. Thankfully, I was able to make it with just enough time, and I was actually actually able to snag one of the very few beach chairs. I was stinking hyped. I've not seen a Disney level fireworks show in years. Thanks, Disneyland. Unfortunately, 8 o'clock, which is when the fireworks are supposed to start, came and went, and there was absolutely no sign of the fireworks.
I mean, it could just be an error, right? They could have just forgotten to start them. There's no way they're canceled. It's not windy, it's not raining. Heck, it isn't even overcast.
But as we approached 30 minutes with no sign of the fireworks and no communication as to whether they were canceled or not, I was starting to lose hope until out of absolutely nowhere, they started. And let me tell you, it was well worth the wait. I could not have asked for a better view. I could see both the castle and the fireworks, and they even played the music. Seeing something like this for free was actually crazy. That said, this wasn't the only place that I watched them. I also watched them from over at the Contemporary Resort. I came back on another day and arrived about an hour before the fireworks started on a mission to find the best spot to watch the fireworks from. A lot of this time was spent wandering around the hotel looking at all the cool stuff they have, like this giant mural. This wandering was almost my downfall though, as I boarded an elevator and got off on level 2, which was pretty much just purgatory. Both hallways were closed, no one was there, and it was dead quiet, and for some reason the elevator indicator wasn't working, so I thought I was genuinely stuck. Thankfully, I was not stuck, and after a short elevator ride, I re-emerged on the main level, and something caught my eye. I thought I saw a door on the other side of the room, and lo and behold, there was a door, which took me to the perfect firework viewing spot. There were even chairs. This looks like it should be an incredible view of the fireworks and the castle, and it would be if the fireworks were actually launched from the castle, which they aren't. If you're in the park or watching them from the Caribbean, this isn't a problem and actually makes for an easier viewing experience. From the Contemporary though, it's the exact opposite. The fireworks were far enough to the side that it was hard to see both the castle and the fireworks at the same time, and with the fireworks show being a wombo combo projection and fireworks show, I wanted to see what was happening on the castle, something I missed out on at the Caribbean, but I also wanted to see the fireworks, which created a problem because how far back they're launched. It wasn't the biggest deal, but it was a little disappointing. You want to know what was really disappointing? The fireworks from the Grand Floridian. I completely spoiled the reveal and story on this one earlier, so I'm just gonna keep it super quick. After leaving the yacht club, I arrived at the Magic Kingdom and took the monorail to the Grand Floridian. I figured that this place would also have a great firework viewing spot, but it really didn't. I couldn't find a single angle that I thought would work, other than this one bridge, but I really don't think they'd want me just standing out on that bridge for 15 minutes. Maybe they wouldn't have minded it, but I didn't want to find out the hard way, so I just went back and watched them from the Caribbean beach again. Now, the first time I watched the fireworks from the Caribbean, I had an idea. Could I watch the fireworks from over at EPCOT too?
I mean, I have the time. The EPCOT fireworks are an hour after the Magic Kingdom ones.
And in theory, the area by the Skyliner station would give an incredible view,
But I don't know how long it would take to get over there.
I'll have to go all the way back to the Magic Kingdom bus station, then wait for a bus to get there, and even once I arrive at the boardwalk, who knows how far I'm gonna have to walk.
It's gonna be tight, but I think it's doable.
Or at least doable on the second attempt. Because how long the fireworks were delayed that first time, it was pretty much a guaranteed failure. Though I did see them from the monorail, which was pretty cool. The day I really tried was when I was at the Contemporary. This is within walking distance of the bus station, so if I'm gonna do it from anywhere, it's gonna be from there. I ran down the escalators and out the building. From there, I had to find my way to the park entrance in the dark, which actually took me past the back exit I was taken out of that one time I fell on a wall and put a hole in my leg.
It's a long story.
I made it to the bus station with about 25 minutes till the EPCOT fireworks, and by the grace of God, the boardwalk bus was already there. The bus ride to the boardwalk was super stressful. I had no idea where it was going to drop me off or how long it was going to take to get there. It was basically make or break at this point. Thankfully, the bus ride wasn't too long, and I made it to the boardwalk with a decent amount of time. I had time to both take a pee and also find what I thought was going to be the perfect firework viewing spot. Unfortunately, the show was not worth it. A lot of the show happens close to the ground with big water effects and lighting bogus, a lot of which I couldn't see from outside the park. So every so often there'd be a few big fireworks, and then 15 or so seconds with nothing, and then a few more big fireworks followed by more nothing. It wasn't a bad watch by any means, it was just really not worth the stress of getting over there in good time. I'd say do the ones over at the Magic Kingdom and then just head home, unless you actually have park tickets. If you don't, I would absolutely recommend having a free Disney day like this. It was an incredible time. I would also recommend watching this video where I try and ride every ride at Disneyland in one day.